and thousands of what were expected to be counter-protesters took to the streets and cities across England last night following a week of rioting. Thousands of officers had been on standby in anticipation of further disorder and violence, but as it turned out, there were no protests to counter. So far, there have been no similar riots or protests here in Scotland, but the First Minister has expressed concern that the violence may spread here. John Swinney is with us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
And that concern that you've expressed, is that based on intelligence?
Obviously, the police are undertaking a comprehensive intelligence gathering exercise, and that intelligence work has identified the possibility of some gatherings in Scotland. That's based on information that is circulating on social media and other applications. And the police have got to make a judgment about whether or not they think those are going to turn into reality. Now, thankfully, so far, none of that intelligence has turned into reality, but we have to remain vigilant because of the unacceptable conduct that's taken place in other parts of the United Kingdom, violent conduct, conduct that's been about hatred that's taken place in other parts of the United Kingdom. And I want to everyone to remain vigilant because we have communities that are experiencing a great deal of fear and anxiety as a consequence of what they're observing in other parts of the United Kingdom.
If, and as you say, hopefully it won't happen, but if it did happen here, would you react in the same way as the UK government? Obviously extra police, but also taking a very swift approach to dishing out justice to those who have been convicted?
There's three aspects to our response. The first is that I want to proactively give the political leadership, and I'm very grateful to the other political leaders in Scotland for coming together yesterday to demonstrate our unity and strength of opinion that the type of conduct we've seen in other parts of the United Kingdom has absolutely no place here in Scotland, and we want to make that abundantly clear. And I'm grateful to the other political leaders for sharing that discussion with me yesterday. The second aspect is that we have very comprehensive policing plans in place that are intelligence-led, and the Chief Constable and her senior officers are very focused on that task. And the third is obviously the Crown Office. They act independently of the government, but the Crown Office have established plans in place for very swift justice if it's required to be undertaken. These plans were developed for COP26 when there was a concern that there may have been a necessity to use some of those resources and those techniques in that circumstance if there had been any examples where it was required. And those plans are obviously being revisited in the light of events in the rest of the United Kingdom.
So the idea of swift justice would act potentially as a deterrent, do you believe?
Well, obviously the deployment of those approaches is a matter for the Lord Advocate, who acts independently of ministers. But I think what's happened in other parts of the United Kingdom, the very swift application of justice, the signal to individuals who have acted in such a violent fashion, demonstrating hatred towards others, the articulation of Islamophobia that's been prevalent in recent days, that has merited a very swift response from the judicial system in England. And I think the Crown Office will be looking very carefully at exactly what's been done there. And as I say, there have been plans put in place that are long-standing plans that can enable us to act swiftly if that is required.
And how involved have you been with UK ministers in terms of what is going on and the potential for it to spread? And have there been any requests, for instance, for Scottish police officers to bolster the numbers down south?
The Chief Constable made clear yesterday to political leaders that no requests for mutual aid have been made to Police Scotland, but obviously mutual aid is a really important part of policing across the United Kingdom. At times Scotland has contributed towards mutual aid, and at times Scotland has been the beneficiary of mutual aid. So it's an important technique and tactic. But obviously, from Police Scotland's point of view, Police Scotland is the second largest force in the United Kingdom. So we have formidable resource at our disposal for policing purposes in Scotland. And the Chief Constable has made it clear to me that that resource is able to be deployed flexibly around Scotland, should it be required, to provide the type of safety and assurance that I want to make sure is in place for the communities that feel very, very anxious at the present moment. I had a discussion yesterday with faith leaders, and it was quite striking to me that around the table there were representatives of the Muslim community and the Jewish community, and both of these communities are feeling acutely anxious about the current situation. So
how were you able to reassure them?
Well, I was able to reassure them by by two things. First of all, the very clear political leadership in Scotland that believes that our community cohesion is an important foundation of our society, and that I will use my office as First Minister, and I'll work with other political parties to make it clear that this country has absolutely no tolerance of bigotry and violence and hatred and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and we just won't have it in Scotland. And we will. It's a prize that our communities are as cohesive as they are. That's been a product of a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment from a lot of people over many years. And the second thing is to make it clear, and the Chief Constable has made this clear in a discussion last night with community representatives in Glasgow, that Police Scotland is ready and prepared to deal with the situation should it have to be handled in Scotland. I hope that's not the case, but the police are well positioned to handle this should it arise. Now, you asked me, Gary, about...
But I do wonder, I mean, your own predecessor, Hamza Yousaf, has said that, he's worried about his family. He's not sure about his safety in Scotland, in the UK, in Europe even, because we've seen a rise in some of these incidents in other places too.
And I think that's illustrative of the deep sense of anxiety that exists within the Muslim community, and it exists in other communities. I made the point a moment ago that both representatives of the Muslim community and the Jewish community feel very, very anxious at the present moment. You've had commentary on this on your programme already this morning. So I feel it's part of my duty to address that. I listened with great care to what Hamza Yousaf said the other day, and I've spoken to Hamza on many, many occasions over our deep friendship about what he has to endure, and it's absolutely awful what he has to endure in terms of racial abuse. And I've on occasion seen some of the material that he's had to experience, and it's profoundly awful. So I've got to work very hard to make sure that people feel safe and feel at ease in our communities. I think we're very fortunate in Scotland that there is such a view across our political parties and across our communities that we want to work together and stick together. And I think that's reflected in the type of dialogue that we've had in the last couple of days about these issues.
And it's thought that much of this was sparked by disinformation being shared on social media. Just yesterday, there was a lot of disinformation from people, probably well-meaning, saying avoid Glasgow city centre because there will be a demonstration. We heard of businesses shutting up shop because of that. Would you support a crackdown on social media to prevent disinformation, whether it's well-meaning or whether it's malicious?
I think the social media companies have got a lot of improvement to undertake in their conduct. I was very struck by the communication from Ofcom yesterday, reminding social media companies of their obligation to remove material that incites hatred or violence. And I don't think that's been the case. And I welcome the fact you asked me earlier on whether we'd had engagement with the United Kingdom government, and the Justice Secretary has spoken to the Home Secretary about all of what has been happening. And as part of those discussions, the UK Secretary of State, Peter Kyle, is also pressing the social media companies to take action to remove material that is inciting violence and hatred. And I very much endorse that, and will support and encourage the United Kingdom government to take that very strong stance. Okay. Now, the disinformation can be profoundly dangerous. We had an example at the weekend in Scotland where there was information, false information was circulated suggesting that a stabbing that had taken place in Stirling had been undertaken by somebody from the Muslim community, and it was information circulated to try to stir up hatred. Now, I was very grateful to Police Scotland for immediately intervening on that material, making it clear that this incident, which is a very serious incident, and I feel very much for the victim that was involved, had nothing to do with a person from the Muslim community. And Police Scotland, in my view, did absolutely the right thing to stamp on that